There is no real intro to this video, we're just gonna get straight into the meat and potatoes. So in Season 2, Episode 7, oh hey, what a coincidence, of Avatar The Last Airbender introduces us to Ursa and gives us a real peek into the home life of the Fire Nation royal family. The last we got of it was a brief flash in the storm of Zuko and Azula happily playing, not too long before this episode it seems. It is a very revealing insight into the parenting that shaped Azula and Zuko into who they are. There's a contrast between the visible parent, that being Ursa, and the invisible parent, that being Ozai. Ursa's face is always visible, Ozai's is hidden, and almost never has any on-screen conversations with any of his children or his wife for that matter. It's a case of overt maltreatment versus covert maltreatment. However, these styles still have a huge impact on each of their two children. Still, we are mostly focusing on Ursa and Azula. Ursa's first ever appearance has her dip her sleeve into a man-made pond like a sociopath. Sorry, I had to. But really, she gently dips her finger into the water, not minding that her sleeve will be wet so she can call in a baby turtle duck in order to feed it, showing a gentle and generous side. When Zuko accidentally assaults the baby turtle duck in an attempt to emulate Azula, she doesn't get mad at him or raise her voice or punish him. She asks him why. She wants to get to the root of that behavior. We can see that she has a big effect on Zuko already because he himself says, why would she do that about the mama turtle duck? He wants to know a reason, and Ursa uses that to teach him a valuable lesson and imbues in him the beginning of retrospection. It's also not so subtle foreshadowing for Ursa's actions later in the episode. Next up, Azula is cartwheeling with Ty Lee. Azula fails the last jump while Ty Lee lands it, and so Azula pushes her. Why would she do that? Because Azula, as we should know from her first appearance, is a very insecure person, and that leads her to be very jealous when people do something better than her, and she is all too aware of her faults.
You waste all your time playing with knives. You're not even good.
Azula, by the start of the series, takes May and Ty Lee with her because they make up for what she lacks, but here, she ends up lashing out with an aggression. Where does the idea to use aggression come from? Her daddy. We'll get back to that. Azula still shows her childish side, because she is a child, as she and Ty Lee decide to play a prank on May and Zuko in the way that kids do when someone's got a crush, or they think they do. I've seen people claim that Azula was one of Zuko's abusers. They never provide any evidence of that, and no such scene exists. They were enemies for a bit, but by that logic, Zuko's Azula's abuser. Using fire to play a prank doesn't reflect negatively on Azula because, as we see in the headband, fire is a common form of play. All Bender children use fire. With Azula's age, she shouldn't have a full understanding of consequences. My last proof for that debunk is Ursa's reaction. Ursa is shown to think very negatively of Azula like all the time. She's not even shown to be happy seeing Azula. Ursa doesn't bat an eyelash at the concept of them playing, and the flashback in the storm and even in this episode shows the two of them playing happily. Zuko not wanting to play with Azula isn't him fearing his abuser or anything like that. I think it's just a show of them not getting along. Zuko here is being mocking, not fearful. We also get early hints of Azula being manipulative with her "we are brother and sister" spiel. The next trait we are shown of Ursa is her staunch loyalty to the Fire Nation, naturally because she's a high-class woman, plus propaganda. Ursa is very happy about Iroh seizing Ba Sing Se and the prospect of burning it to the ground. This creates contrast with her first scene of her geniality towards the turtle ducks compared to her cheering on the deaths of countless Earth Kingdom citizens, including babies. This conditional extension of kindness shows how one of the first objectives of the Fire Nation is to limit empathy and dehumanize. The cognitive dissonance is lost on Ursa, but I mean cognitive dissonance is kind of her main feature anyways. Oh, also Azula burns the doll Iroh gave her. A child destroys a toy they don't like. Who cares? This moment only looks bad if you're as much of a hypocrite as Ursa. I do think there is a hint of misogyny there. Zuko gets a special dagger, which is a spoil of war, represents the Fire Nation's dominance. Azula gets a doll because, of course a girl wouldn't be interested in the goings-ons of politics. Azula points out that Ozai would be next in line and Iroh could lose his birthright. Ursa scolds her for her disloyalty first and foremost. You shouldn't suggest something like that could happen, and gets even more staunch with her jingoism by saying that Azulan is in picture-perfect health. Babe, so not true, but that is in line with royals. Oh, also Ursa isn't there to hear Azula mock Iroh. Her "what is wrong with that girl" is again for her being disloyal by calling Azulan Grandpa rather than Fire Lord and denying the lie that Azulan is totally still in his prime. What is wrong with that girl shows what's wrong with Ursa and her parenting style. With Zuko, she asks why. She asks for a reason from him. But with Azula, she blames her bad actions on a 9-year-old. It's adultification, plain and simple.
Azula, we don't speak that way. It would be awful if Uncle Iroh didn't return. And besides, Fire Lord Azulan is a picture of health.
How would you like it if Cousin Lu 10 wanted Dad to die?
I still think our dad would make a much better Fire Lord than his royal tea-loving kookiness.
We know where Azula is getting her words from, Ozai. The man cleans up his words in front of Daddy, but it's the exact same concept as Azula. He's faceless, he never talks to her, but he obviously has said those kinds of things around her off screen, and because Azula loves him and wants to impress him, she repeats them without much of a thought. And it's easier because she doesn't get along with Iroh, and the formality of her relationship with Azulan prevents the real bond. He's just a thing in the way of Ozai, her beloved papa, getting what he wants. So it's a similar dehumanization that has been instilled in Azula, but of course Ursa does not see that. When we see Ozai and Azula interact on the screen, she doesn't face him, only takes a glance when she gets the answer right. He does look at her sort of, but Zuko sits between them, creating a distance. Ozai gives the slightest affection with "my dear" only after she responds correctly. There's a conditional aspect to their relationship. Azula is only his dear as long as she benefits him in his quest for absolute power and dominance. Ozai also calls Azulan grandfather like Azula suggested, rather than Fire Lord like Ursa. I also like how his smile instantly disappears when Zuko wants to try and prove himself, like, boy. It really creates a funny contrast because Ozai is practically the Zuko in his relationship with his own daddy. Ursa also never thinks to compliment Azula for her success when we know she's a total jingoist. She only thinks to uplift Zuko. Both parents have a clear favorite. I also think it foreshadows that family is more important to Ursa than her nation. So Azula arrives in Zuko's room and warns him about Ozai's plan to murder him. For some reason, people have this misconception that Azula always lies as a trauma response to Azula. I mean, it is a trauma response to an abuser, that abuser being Ozai. Azula told the truth here. Ozai confirms as such in the Day of the Black Sun. Zuko is denying that his dad is an abuser because he wants his love, to please him, and he states as such in the Day of the fucking Black Sun. Azula also warns Ursa when she never had to. Azula does not want to see her brother dead, most of the time. I can't say the same for Zuko, it really does seem like he would prefer her dead. As I said, Ursa never overheard all that shit, just that Ozai was going to do something to Zuko. After suggesting that her Dusty would do something bad to Zuko, she is enraged and grabs Azula very hard, so that the little girl's face contorts in fear. It's pretty clear what this emotion is caused by. I'll just have my psych article explain it. The scapegoat dynamic can be similarly observed in the mechanism of transferring emotional tensions that accumulate in the marital system to the parent-child relationship. Numerous studies have confirmed a correlation between marital problems and child adjustment difficulties, as well as behavioral problems and emotional inadequacy. Thus, we can assume that unresolved tensions in marriage serve as an excuse or incentive for discordant parenting of children in the family. The child behaves in a way that gives the parents the opportunity to regulate their tensions, which they exploit because they are unable to confront the parental problems. We use the term dysregulated response when parents, due to lack of control over their own experiences, relationship stress, and low self-esteem, use a child's inappropriate behavior as an incentive to use punitive parenting methods. The falling apart of the marriage of Ursa and Ozai creates a lot of tension between them, and that stress that Ursa plants onto Azula and Azula's bad behavior serves as the justification Ursa makes. We never see Ursa ever confront Ozai until she discovers that he's going to kill Zuko, and she never acknowledges the negative effect that Ozai is having on Azula. She just blames Azula for it. Ursa is on heavy denial. The denialism also affects Azula, who denies the impact Ursa had on her jealousy of Zuko being her favorite, the inability to bond with her mother. Even Euphemia is the biggest LOL because in Zuko alone, Azula says this.
Who's going to make me? Mom?
She's acknowledging that she herself feared Ursa enough that she could effectively discipline her in the moment, but Azula keeps acting out because it's the only attention she ever gets from her mother. It's where the whole monster thing comes from. A monster's innately evil, right? That's what children think, at least. Since Ursa blames Azula's inherent nature for her unsavory behavior, then Azula's child brain thinks her mother thought she was a monster. People are afraid of monsters, and while Azula loves her friends and family deeply, she is deeply afraid of being betrayed, of losing control, because that is what happened with Ursa. She feels as though Ursa betrayed her, and not only was their final conversation an argument, Ursa also abandoned her to save Zuko, whom Azula believes is Ursa's favorite. and she's not wrong in that either. Ursa would sacrifice herself for Azula any day, but doesn't make Azula feel like she would, so Azula takes the monster label and runs with it. She is innately evil. She denies that Ursa had any negative effect on her, and that she didn't feel abandoned and does not fear future abandonment. She has to make her friends fear her, or else it could end up like it did with Ursa. But it did end up that way. Her brother betrayed her, her friends betrayed her, and her father, who she tried so hard to please, discarded her and she lost control. As she teeters on the edge of psychosis, her first betrayal appears. The betrayal says the one thing she fears the most.
No, I love you, Azula. I do.
I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Also, nothing wrong with talking about content as it was intended. Before it was, I would say, ruined, but changed as more neutral. Bye.